I'll make you never use a wheelchair again. But there's one condition. Robert Thompson had been confined to a wheelchair for 2 years, his fortune intact, but his body completely paralyzed from the waist down. Every specialist he consulted reached the same conclusion: he would never walk again. That's when he felt a small presence beside him in the silent hallway of his mansion. A child of just 5 years approached and whispered in his ear with a sweet but determined voice. "I'll make you never use a wheelchair again, but there's one condition," said the little girl, placing her tiny hand on his arm. Robert looked at the child with suspicion. How had this little girl gotten into his home? And what was this talk of making him walk? "Who are you? How did you get in here?" he asked, already thinking of calling security. "My name is Emma. I know how to get in because I know every corner of this house," she replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The businessman felt a shiver. There was something familiar about this child, but he couldn't place it. "And what would this condition be?" he asked, half curious, half irritated. "You need to forgive my mother," said Emma, looking straight into his eyes. Robert felt his blood run cold. Now he understood. This child was the daughter of Sarah Miller, the maid he had fired 3 years ago for theft, the woman he had humiliated in front of all the staff, accusing her of stealing jewelry from his late wife. "Your mother is a thief," he said, his voice hard. "I have nothing to forgive. My mother never took anything that wasn't hers," Emma shot back, showing no fear. "And I can prove it." "How?" asked Robert, surprised at his own curiosity. "First, you have to let me help you walk again. My grandfather taught me special exercises before he passed. He was a physical therapist and helped people like you." Robert almost laughed. A 5-year-old child thinking she could do what the best doctors in the country couldn't. It was ridiculous. "This is absurd. I'll call security to take you away." "Go ahead," said Emma, crossing her little arms. "But if I leave now, you'll never know if I really could help you, and you'll never find out the truth about my mother." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, there was something in the child's determination that struck a chord in Robert's hardened heart. Maybe it was the desperation of 2 years without moving his legs, or maybe it was curiosity about what she had to say about Sarah. "Fine," he said finally, "but if this is some kind of scam..." "It's not a scam, Uncle Robert. It's a promise." "How do you know my name?" "My mother talked about you a lot. She said you were a good man, just very sad after Aunt Catherine passed." The mention of his wife made Robert clench his fists. Catherine had died of cancer 3 years ago, shortly before the accident that left him paralyzed. It was true he had become a bitter man after that. "Don't talk about my wife," he murmured. "I'm sorry," said Emma, genuinely remorseful. "I just wanted to say I understand your pain. My grandfather passed last year, and I was very sad too." Robert looked at the girl closely for the first time. She had curly hair tied back with a simple elastic, big expressive eyes, and wore plain but clean clothes. There was a strange wisdom in that childish face. "How do you plan to help me?" he asked, still skeptical. "First, I need to touch your legs to feel where the problem is," said Emma, stepping closer to the wheelchair. "Don't even think about it. No stranger is touching me." "I'm not a stranger. I lived here until I was 2, remember? My mum used to bring me to work when I was a baby because she had no one to leave me with." Robert vaguely recalled a small child playing in the mansion's hallways years ago. Sarah always apologized for bringing her daughter, but he and Catherine never minded. In fact, Catherine even played with the girl a few times. "That was a long time ago," he said, "but I remember you. You gave me candy once in the kitchen. It was chocolate." The memory hit him like a punch to the gut. Robert had indeed given chocolate to Sarah's daughter one afternoon, when Catherine was undergoing chemotherapy. The child had been crying after a fall in the garden, and he'd offered the treat to comfort her. "Fine," he said, surprising himself. "But only once. If it doesn't work, you leave and never come back." Emma smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. "Deal. But it will work." She knelt beside the wheelchair and placed her small hands over Robert's legs, atop his dress pants. Closing her eyes, she stayed silent for a few minutes. "What are you doing?" he asked, uneasy with the touch. "Feeling where you're locked up," she replied, eyes still shut. "My grandfather taught me our bodies speak to us, but sometimes we don't know how to listen." "That's nonsense." "Your right knee is stiffer than the left," Emma said, eyes still closed. "And there's a spot here on your thigh that's really tense." Robert was startled. She'd pinpointed exactly where he felt the most discomfort, even though he couldn't move his legs. "How do you know that?" "My grandfather taught me. He said I had a special gift for sensing people's pain." "And what does this magical gift say I should do?" he asked, trying to keep his tone sarcastic but already less convinced. "Tomorrow morning I'll come back and we'll start the exercises. But first, you have to promise me one thing." "What?" "That you'll hear the whole truth about my mom before sending me away." Robert hesitated. Part of him didn't want to relive that painful history. The discovery of the theft had come right after losing Catherine, when his grief was still raw. "Fine," he said finally. "But if you can't help me in a week, I don't want to hear about your mother or you ever again." "A week isn't much time for a miracle," Emma said seriously. "But I promise in a week, you'll feel something different." She stood and walked toward the door, but paused before leaving. "Uncle Robert?" "What?" "My mum cries every night over what happened. She says she lost more than a job. She lost a family." Before Robert could reply, Emma disappeared down the hallway, leaving him alone with his tangled thoughts. That night, for the first time in months, Robert struggled to sleep. He couldn't stop thinking about the child and her words about Sarah. Could he have made a terrible mistake? The next morning, he woke to the sound of someone rustling in the garden. He asked Miss Jenkins, the current housekeeper, to check. "It's a child, Mr. Robert," she said, returning from the window. "Looks like she slept out there." "What do you mean, slept out there?" "She's lying under the cherry tree with an old blanket. Seems like she's just waking up." Robert felt a pang in his chest. Had Emma spent the night outside just to be there the next morning? "Let her in," he said, against his better judgment. Minutes later, Emma appeared in the living room, her hair messy and clothes wrinkled. "You slept in the garden?" he asked. "I live far away. If I went home, I wouldn't make it back in time for the exercises," she replied, as if it were obvious. "Where do you live?" "In the South Bronx." "It takes 2 hours by bus to get here." Robert knew the neighborhood by name. It was one of the poorest areas on the south side of New York City. The thought of a 5-year-old child making that trip alone deeply troubled him. "Does your mother know where you are?" Emma lowered her eyes. "She's working. She leaves very early and comes back very late." "What does she do?" "In the morning, she cleans offices. In the afternoon, she takes care of a sick man. And at night, she cleans a supermarket." Robert felt a heaviness in his stomach. Sarah was working 3 different jobs to survive after he had fired her. "Let's do the exercises," said Emma, trying to change the subject. "First, you're going to have breakfast," he said, calling Miss Jenkins. "Prepare a hearty plate for the girl." As Emma ate, Robert watched her every move. The child devoured the food as if she hadn't eaten in days, but she tried to maintain the manners she had clearly learned from her mother. "Now we can begin," she said, wiping her mouth with the napkin. "What exactly are you going to do?" "Special movements my grandfather taught me. He said when someone doesn't use their legs for a long time, they forget how to work. We have to teach them again." Emma guided the wheelchair to a more spacious area of the room and helped Robert get into position. "Now I'm going to move your legs very slowly, and you have to try to feel the movement." She began making circular motions with his feet, then bent and straightened his knees gently. The whole time she explained what she was doing. "My grandfather said the body needs to remember how good it feels to move." "Do you feel anything?" "No," Robert lied, because he had actually felt something strange, almost like a tingling. "That's okay. It's normal on the first day, but your body is paying attention, I can tell." After an hour of exercises, Emma stopped and wiped the sweat from her forehead. "We'll continue tomorrow, but today you need to rest." "Wait," Robert said as she headed for the door. "You're not sleeping in the garden again?" "I don't have anywhere else." "Ms. Jenkins will prepare a room for you. But I don't have money to pay." "No one asked for money." Emma smiled, and for the first time in 2 years, Robert felt something like joy in his chest. That afternoon, while Emma rested, Robert kept thinking about Sarah. He remembered how dedicated she was, always arriving early and leaving late. She took care of the house as if it were her own, and Catherine had liked her very much. The theft accusation had come when Margaret, the previous housekeeper, claimed to have found a set of Catherine's jewelry in Sarah's room. At the time, Robert had been so consumed by grief that he didn't even question the story. He simply fired Sarah in front of all the other staff, calling her a thief. Now, watching Sarah's daughter, he began to doubt his own certainty. Could a woman who raised such a special child really be capable of stealing? The next day, Emma repeated the exercises. And the day after that, too. For a whole week, she slept in the mansion and worked diligently on Robert's legs. On the 6th session, something changed. "Uncle Robert," Emma said, pausing the exercises, "did you feel that?" "Feel what?" "Your leg trembled. Just a little, but it trembled." Robert had felt it too, but didn't want to get his hopes up. "Must have been your imagination." "It wasn't. It happened when I did this." She repeated the movement, pressing a specific spot on his thigh. And it happened again. A barely noticeable tremor, but undeniably real. "My God," Robert murmured, his eyes wide. "I told you it would work," Emma said, smiling. "Now do you believe me?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Robert was in shock. For the first time in 2 years, he had felt movement in his legs. It was minimal, almost nothing, but it was real. But it was. "How is this possible?" he asked. "My grandfather used to say the body sometimes gets scared to try again after an injury. We have to convince it that it's safe. And now we keep going, but you have to hold up your end of the deal." "What part?" "Hearing the truth about my mother." Robert sighed. He had promised, and after what had just happened, he felt he owed the child at least that much. "All right, but first tell me, how did you learn these exercises?" "My grandfather William was a physical therapist for 40 years. When I was little, he'd sometimes take me to work with him. I'd watch him treat people." "And he taught you?" "He said I had special hands. When I touched patients, I could feel where it hurt. So he started teaching me simple things." "Did your mother know about this?" Emma suddenly looked sad. "Mum doesn't like it when I talk about Grandpa. She starts crying." "Why?" "Because he passed away right after we left here. She thinks it's her fault." Robert felt a lump in his throat. Sarah had lost her father shortly after losing her job. "Now tell me about your mother," he said, trying to shift the focus. "My mum never took Aunt Catherine's jewelry," Emma said with absolute certainty. "How can you be sure? You were so little." "Because I was there the day it happened." "What do you mean?" "It was a Sunday. Mom had come into work because there was a party on Monday. I came along because my babysitter was sick." Robert vaguely remembered that Sunday. Catherine had asked Sarah to organize everything for a business meeting the next day. "Go on," he said. "Aunt Margaret was really angry because she said my mum was too young and that you'd like her more than her." "Margaret said that?" "She didn't know I was listening. I was playing under the stairs. Then I saw her go into my mum's room with a little box in her hand." Robert's heart began to race. "What kind of box?" "A small, shiny one. She opened my mum's drawer and put the box inside." "Are you sure about what you saw?" "Yes, my grandpa always told me to pay attention to things. And later, when you yelled at my mum, I wanted to tell, but she stopped me." "Why did your mother stop you?" "She said no one would believe a 2-year-old and that Aunt Margaret could do bad things to us if she found out I'd seen." Robert felt sick. Could Margaret have set the whole thing up? He remembered how she had found the jewelry, showing up in his living room with the box in hand, claiming she'd been looking for something in Sarah's room. "Where is Margaret now?" he asked. "I don't know. After my mum left, she disappeared too." In truth, Robert remembered perfectly. Margaret had quit a week after the incident, saying she couldn't work in a house with thieves. At the time, he'd taken it as a sign of her integrity. "Emma, have you told this story to anyone?" "Only Grandpa. He said one day I'd get the chance to tell the truth." "And your mother? Does she know you're here?" Emma lowered her head. "No, she thinks I'm at school." "How do you get here every day?" "I wake up really early and take 2 buses. I go back during school lunch so no one notices I'm gone." Robert was horrified. A 5-year-old was lying to her mother and risking her safety to help him. "This has to stop," he said. "You can't keep skipping school." "But what about your exercises?" "We'll figure it out. First, I need to talk to your mother. She won't want to talk to you." "Why?" "Because she still cries when she remembers what happened. She says she lost her honor." The word honor struck Robert like an arrow. Sarah had been raised in a traditional way, where reputation mattered more than anything. Being publicly accused of theft had destroyed not just her job, but her dignity. "I need to find a way to talk to her," he said. "She won't agree." "Then you'll have to help me." "How?" "Take me to her." Emma's eyes widened. "You want to come to my house?" "It's the only way she'll listen to me." "But you can't walk." "I'll go in a wheelchair." "Our house is very simple," Emma said, embarrassed. "It's not like here." "It doesn't matter. If you want me to forgive your mother, I need to hear her side in person." "What if she doesn't want to talk?" "Then you'll have done your part. The rest is up to me." That afternoon, Robert asked his driver, William, to prepare the wheelchair-accessible car. It was the first time in 2 years he'd left the mansion for anything other than a doctor's appointment. The trip to the South Bronx took nearly 2 hours in New York City traffic. Along the way, Robert watched the city gradually change. The elegant downtown buildings gave way to simpler structures, then to small houses, and finally to cramped shacks pressed tightly together. "It's here," Emma said when they reached a dirt road. Robert looked out the window and saw a tiny 2-room house with unfinished cinder-block walls and an asbestos roof. A small front porch served as the living room. "Are you sure this is the place?" asked William, the driver. "Yes," Emma replied. "My mum should be getting back from her first job now." Just then, a woman appeared at the corner, walking slowly and carrying a bag. Even from a distance, Robert recognized Sarah immediately. She was thinner, her hair shorter, but she still carried herself with the same grace as always. When Sarah saw the car in front of her house, she stopped walking. When she recognized Robert in the window, her face went pale. "Emma, what have you done?" she shouted, rushing toward the car. "Mom, I can explain," the girl said, stepping out of the vehicle. "You lied to me. You weren't in school." Sarah was visibly upset. "Sarah," Robert called from the car window. "I need to talk to you." "I have nothing to say to you," she replied, refusing to look at him. "Emma, get inside now." "Mom, please. He found out about Aunt Margaret." Sarah froze. "What?" "I told him what I saw that day." "Emma, I told you never to talk about that. But it was the only way to help him walk again." "What do you mean, walk again?" With William's help, Robert lowered himself from the car window into his wheelchair. "Your daughter has been helping me with physical therapy," he said, "and in return I promise to hear the truth about what happened 3 years ago." "You decided the truth a long time ago," Sarah said bitterly. "Maybe I was wrong." "Maybe?" Sarah let out a humorless laugh. "You called me a thief in front of all the staff, made me carry my things out in a cardboard box like I was some kind of criminal, and now you come here saying maybe you were wrong? I know it was unfair." "Unfair?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You ruined my life. No one would hire me because everyone knew about the accusation. I had to take jobs that barely paid anything just to survive." "Sarah, And you know what hurts the most?" she continued, cutting him off. "I actually loved working in that house. I took care of her as if she were my own. I was fond of Miss Catherine. I respected you. Emma grew up playing in those hallways. It was more than just a job to me." "Mom, don't cry," said Emma, hugging her mother's legs. "Why are you here, Mr. Robert?" asked Sarah, drying her eyes. "What do you want from me now?" "I want to hear your side of what happened." "My side?" I never took anything that wasn't mine. Never. But you chose to believe Margaret instead. Margaret said she found the jewelry in your room. Margaret lied. She planted that jewelry there because she was jealous of me. Why? Because Ms. Catherine was teaching me how to manage the household. She said once she recovered from her illness, she wanted me to be the official housekeeper. Margaret found out and was afraid of losing her position. Robert vaguely remembered Catherine mentioning promoting Sarah. At the time, he hadn't paid much attention because he was preoccupied with his wife's treatment. Do you have any proof of this? I do, said Sarah, surprising him. I kept a letter Miss Catherine wrote to me, talking about the promotion. But what difference does it make now? May I see the letter? Sarah hesitated, then motioned for them to follow her inside the house. The interior was even simpler than Robert had imagined. 2 small bedrooms, a tiny bathroom, and a kitchen that also served as a living room, but everything was impeccably clean and organized. Sarah went to an old trunk and pulled out a yellowed sheet of paper. Here, she said, handing the letter to Robert. It was Catherine's handwriting, without a doubt. The letter read, "Dear Sarah, I want you to know how grateful I am for everything you've done for our family. Once I recover from this illness, I intend to officially appoint you as head housekeeper. You have the kindness and competence needed to take good care of Robert when I'm no longer here to do so. I know I can trust you completely. With love, Catherine." Robert read the letter 3 times, feeling the weight of guilt grow in his chest. Catherine had written this 2 weeks before she passed. She truly had trusted Sarah. "Why did you never show me this?" he asked. "You didn't even let me speak that day. You threw me out of the house in front of everyone, and afterward, what difference would it have made? Who would have believed me over the word of the boss? Sarah, I made a terrible mistake." "You certainly did, and now you want me to accept your apology and pretend nothing happened?" "No, I want to make things right." "How?" "First, by publicly admitting you're innocent. Second, by offering you your job back." "I don't want your job," Sarah said, her pride wounded. "Mom," Emma interrupted, "you're not happy with the jobs you have now. Emma, stay out of this." "But it's true. You come home sore and sad every day, and we hardly see each other." Sarah looked at her daughter, heartbroken. It was true, their financial situation was tough, and they barely spent time together. "Even if I wanted to," she said to Robert, "I can't leave my daughter alone to work in a family's house again. She wouldn't be alone, she'd stay at the mansion with me. There are plenty of empty rooms." "You're offering me a job and a home for both of us?" "I am. And I'm offering something even more important." "What?" "My daughter is teaching me how to walk again. In return, I promised I'd forgive you, but now I realize it's me who needs forgiveness." Sarah fell silent for a long time, looking back and forth between Robert and Emma. "I need to think," she said finally. "How much time do you need?" "A week." "All right, but in the meantime, can Emma continue with the exercises?" "She can, but she'll sleep at home and go to school as usual." "Deal." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Over the following week, the routine changed completely. William, the driver, would pick up Emma in the morning, take her to the mansion for her exercises, then drive her to school. In the afternoon, he'd repeat the process for another physical therapy session. Robert was amazed by the progress. In addition to the tremors in his legs, he could now move his toes voluntarily. It was small, but it was far more than any doctor had achieved. "How did you learn to do this?" he asked Emma during one session. "My grandfather used to say the body is like a machine that sometimes forgets how to work. We have to teach it again patiently." "And how did he learn?" "He studied a lot, but he also said he learned by observing. Every person is different." "Do you want to be a physical therapist when you grow up?" "I do, but I also want to be a doctor, to help more people." "Becoming a doctor takes a lot of studying." "I like studying. My mom always said education is the one thing no one can take away from us." Robert was moved by the child's wisdom. Right then, he decided that no matter what Sarah's choice was, he'd make sure Emma had access to the best education possible. At the end of the week, Sarah came to the mansion. "I've decided to accept your offer," she said, "but with a few conditions." "What conditions?" "First, I want a formal work contract with guaranteed labor rights." "Agreed." "Second, I want you to sign a document stating I never stole anything from this house." "Also agreed." "Third, if you ever get tired of me again, warn me in advance. Don't humiliate me in front of others. That will never happen again. And last, I want it in writing that you'll pay for Emma's education until she finishes college." Robert smiled. "Even medical school? Whatever she wants." "Then it's settled." They shook hands, and for the first time in 3 years, Robert felt he'd done the right thing. On Sarah's first day back at the mansion, she brought Emma to see the room that would be hers. The girl was enchanted by the space. It was bigger than their entire home. "Uncle Robert," she said, bouncing on the new bed, "now that Mum's back, will you keep doing the exercises with me?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" "Because you've already forgiven her. So our deal is over." "Our deal isn't over, Emma, it's just changed." "How?" "Now we keep doing the exercises because we're family." "Family?" "Yes. You two are the family I chose to have." Emma ran to hug Robert, and for the first time since the accident, he felt he had a real reason to want to walk again. The exercises continued every day. Sarah, seeing the progress, decided to study physical therapy on weekends to help more. Robert paid for the course without her asking. 3 months later, the first big breakthrough happened. During a morning session, Robert managed to move his entire leg voluntarily. "Oh my God," Sarah cried, watching. "You moved your leg." I saw. Emma jumped. "Do it again, Uncle." Robert tried and repeated the movement. Tears streamed down his face. "After 2 years," he whispered. 2 years. "Grandpa was right," Emma said, also crying. "He said miracles happen when we least expect them." That day, Robert called Dr. Richards, his neurologist, and asked him to come to the mansion. "This is impossible," the doctor said after examining Robert. "According to your tests, you shouldn't have any movement in your legs. But I'm moving them. I can see that, but I don't understand how." "It was Emma," Robert said. "She did special exercises with me." "A 5-year-old?" Dr. Richards seemed skeptical. "She learned from her grandfather, who was a physical therapist." "Well, it doesn't matter how it happened. What matters is that it did. Let's run new tests to assess exactly what's working." The tests revealed that some of the nerves the doctors thought were completely severed were actually just dormant. Emma's exercises had gradually managed to reactivate them. "This is an extremely rare recovery," Dr. Richards explained. "In 40 years of medicine, I've never seen anything like it. Does that mean I can walk again?" "With a lot of work and professional therapy, it's possible you'll be able to stand. Walking normally, that's harder to predict. But is there hope?" "There is hope, eh?" That night, Robert called Sarah and Emma for a serious talk. "I want you both to know that none of this would have been possible without you," he said. "Emma gave me hope when I had none. And Sarah, you taught me about forgiveness." "We should be the ones thanking you," Sarah said. "You gave us a new chance at life." "No, you gave me a new chance at life. And now I want to give back." "What do you mean?" "I want to officially adopt Emma." Sarah and Emma were stunned. "Adopt?" Sarah asked. "Not to take her away from you, to make sure she's my legal heir, that she has access to everything I've built in life." "But why?" "Because she saved me. And because I believe that with the right resources, she can save many others." "Mom, can I say something?" Emma asked. "Of course, sweetheart." "I want to. Not for the money, but because Uncle Robert has become real family to me." Sarah thought for a moment. "If it's for Emma's good, I accept." The next day, Robert called his lawyer to start the adoption process. He also updated his will, leaving half of his estate to Emma and half to Sarah. 6 months later, with the help of professional therapists and Emma's special exercises, Robert managed to stand with the aid of parallel bars. "I can't believe it," Emma shouted when she saw him standing for the first time. "Neither can I," he said, smiling. "But here I am. Now you'll be walking in no time. I hope so." Truthfully, Robert was still far from walking on his own, but the progress was steady. Every small victory was celebrated as a triumph. A year after Sarah's return, life in the mansion had completely changed. The house, once silent and sad, was now full of life. Emma ran through the halls, Sarah sang while she worked, and Robert smiled every day. "Uncle Robert," Emma said one Sunday morning, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you miss how things were before?" "Before what?" "Before you needed the wheelchair." Robert thought carefully before answering. "You know, Emma, I do miss some things. I miss walking without help, climbing stairs, dancing." "You danced?" "I danced with your Aunt Catherine. We loved to dance." "What else do you miss?" "But you know what? If I hadn't ended up in a wheelchair, maybe I never would have really known you. Maybe I never would have learned about forgiveness. Maybe I'd have stayed a bitter man forever." "So you wouldn't trade it?" "No. I'd rather be who I am now, even with all the struggles, than go back to who I was before." Emma smiled and hugged his neck. "I like who you are now, too." 2 years after starting the exercises, Robert took his first unsupported steps. Just 3 steps before he had to grab onto a table, but they were 3 real steps. "I did it!" he shouted, tears in his eyes. "I walked!" Sarah and Emma ran to hug him, and the 3 stood there crying and laughing at the same time. "Grandpa was watching," said Emma. "I'm sure he was watching." That week, Dr. Richards came for a new evaluation. "This is truly extraordinary," he said. "You've regained about 60% of the mobility in your legs. That's far more than any of us thought possible. And can it improve even more? With time and continued physical therapy, perhaps. But even if it stops here, it's already a miracle." "A miracle named Emma," said Robert, looking at the girl. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "It was all of us together. Grandpa always said miracles need lots of people to happen." 3 years later, when Emma turned 8, Robert could already walk short distances with the help of a cane. It was slow and sometimes painful, but it was walking. To celebrate her birthday, he organized a special party. He invited all the former staff of the house to show that Sarah had been cleared. "I want everyone to know," he said, addressing the guests, "that Sarah Miller never stole anything from this house. The accusation was my mistake, and I publicly apologize for it." Many of the staff cried. They had always liked Sarah and were sad when she left. "And I also want you to know," Robert continued, "that this girl here," he pointed to Emma, "gave me back not just the use of my legs, but the joy of living." Emma, embarrassed by the attention, hid behind Sarah. "Go on, sweetheart," her mother said. "Say something." "I just want to say," Emma began softly, "that Uncle Robert taught me that sometimes people do wrong things, not because they're bad, but because they're in pain. And that forgiving isn't forgetting what happened, but choosing not to stay angry forever." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, after everyone had left, Robert, Sarah, and Emma sat on the mansion's porch to talk. "You know, this is the happiest home I've ever lived in," Robert said. "What do you mean?" asked Sarah. "You've always lived here." "I have, but it wasn't a happy home. It was just a big, expensive place. You two turned it into a real home." "You've changed a lot, too," Sarah said. "When I worked here before, you were a good person but very closed off. Now you smile every day." "It's because now I know what really matters." "What matters?" Emma asked. "The people we love, the good we can do, the chance to start over when we make mistakes." "And walking again," Emma teased. "Walking is nice," Robert laughed. "But having you two is much better." 5 years later, when Emma was 10, she told Robert she had a surprise for him. "What surprise?" "I can't tell, but you need to practice walking without the cane for a few weeks." "Emma, you know I can't walk far without it." "I know, but it's just for something special, please." Robert couldn't refuse Emma, so he spent the next weeks practicing walking unaided. He could manage about 20 steps before needing to hold on to something. On the day of the surprise, Emma led him to the mansion's main room. There stood a piano he hadn't seen in years. "Remember how you said you missed dancing with Aunt Catherine?" she asked. "I do." "Well, today you're going to dance with me." "Emma, I can't dance." I can barely walk." "Yes, you can. We'll just dance slowly." Sarah entered the room and began playing a gentle tune on the piano, one Catherine used to play. "Come on," Emma said, holding out her hand. Robert rose from his wheelchair and took the girl's hand. They began to dance, very slowly, with him leaning on her when needed. "It's not the same as dancing with Aunt Catherine," Emma said, "but is it just as nice?" "It's better," Robert said, his eyes full of tears. "It's so much better." They danced for 5 whole minutes, with Robert managing to keep his balance most of the time. "Now I'm sure," he said when the song ended. "Sure of what?" "That you really made me never need a wheelchair again." "What do you mean? You still use it sometimes." "I use it for long distances or when I'm tired, but I don't have to live in it anymore. And that's thanks to you. And to my mum, and to Dr. Richards, and to the physical therapists, and mostly to you," Robert interrupted. "You were the one who believed when no one else did." That night, Robert wrote a letter to Emma, even though she lived in the same house. "My dear heart daughter, today you gave me one of the greatest gifts of my life. It wasn't just the dance, but what it meant. You taught me that miracles exist, but they need time, patience, and love to happen. When you came into my life 5 years ago, I was a broken man, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I was full of anger, pain, and pride. You healed me from the inside out. You taught me about forgiveness, humility, and the power of true love. So I hope one day, when you're older, you'll fully understand what you did for me. It wasn't just making me walk again, it was making me live again. I love you as if you were my blood daughter, because you are my heart daughter. Forever grateful, Dad Robert." He left the letter on Emma's pillow. The next morning he found a reply. "Heart Dad, you saved me too. You gave me a family, a home, and the chance to study to become a doctor. But most of all, you taught me that people can change and that love is stronger than anger. Grandpa always said God puts the right people in our path at the right time. I think we found each other because we needed each other. I love you so much. Your daughter, Emma." Years passed. Emma grew up and became a brilliant young woman. By 15, she already knew she wanted to be a doctor, specializing in neurology and physiatry. "I want to study cases like yours," she told Robert. "I want to help others who've lost hope. I'm sure you'll be an amazing doctor." "And what about you? Any other dreams you want to fulfill?" Robert thought for a moment. "You know, I want to see you graduate. I want to be there when you get your medical degree. You will be, I promise. And I want to open a physical therapy institute for those in need, in memory of your grandfather, William." "Really? Really? I want kids like you, who have the gift of helping, to have the chance to learn and grow. Can I help plan it?" "Of course. In fact, I want you to be the medical director once you graduate." 10 years later, the William Miller Physical Therapy Institute was a reality. It served hundreds of people for free every month and was run by a young doctor named Dr. Emma Miller Thompson. At the official opening ceremony, Robert insisted on walking to the stage without any support to present the honorary diploma to Sarah, who had become a physical therapist and coordinated the institute. "This woman," he said, pointing to Sarah, "was a victim of my own injustice. Today, 10 years later, she not only forgave me, but became part of my family and an exemplary professional. And this young woman," he continued, pointing to Emma, "taught me that miracles happen every day, but only for those brave enough to believe in them." Together, they didn't just make me walk again. They made me live again. The audience gave a standing ovation for 5 minutes. That night, at the celebration party, Emma approached Robert. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always, sweetheart." "Remember our first conversation, when I said I had one condition to help you? I remember. You said I had to forgive your mother." "Yes, but the real condition was something else." "Which one?" "It was that you needed to forgive yourself." Robert looked at the young woman in front of him, impressed by her wisdom. "What do you mean?" "You were angry at everyone, but mostly at yourself, for not being able to save Aunt Catherine, for getting hurt in the accident, for hurting my mother. And you knew this from the start. I couldn't explain it back then. I was too little. But Grandpa taught me that sometimes people get stuck, not because of their body, but because of their heart. And now you're truly free, in body and heart. Robert hugged Emma and realized she was right. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. Thank you, sweetheart, for everything. Thank you, Dad, for letting me be part of your life. You weren't just part of my life, Emma. You saved my life. The end of the story. Dear listener, tell us, do you believe forgiveness can heal wounds of the body and soul? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories.